We begin our program with broken hearts in yet another American town, which today became the site of yet another deadly school shooting.
A team of researchers in ECHE have developed 5 questions we believe correlate with these types of tragedies.
How to incorporate play in the classroom. How to implement instruction that is learner-centered. How to assess a student's developmental progress through play. How to create a caring community of learners. How to establish reciprocal relationships. Through our research, we identified common factors that influence a child as they develop. These factors correlate with the information that we have on school shooter Nicholas Cruz. He came from a broken home and grew up with not a great support system. His adopted mother died in November of 2017, and neighbors believe that is when Nicholas truly hit rock bottom. Neighbors told news reporters how cops were constantly at Nicholas's house while he was growing up. Stuart Brown, a medical doctor and a clinical researcher, recognized the importance of play upon completing his research of felons and murderers who he was working with right here in Huntsville, Texas. Stuart Brown studied Charles Whitman, the man who climbed to the top of the tower at University of Texas and shot 46 innocent students along with 26 other convicted murderers. Brown discovered that there were 2 common factors between all the murderers. 1, they came from abusive families, and 2, they did not have enough opportunities to play when they were a child. The lack of play opportunities caused reduced social adaptiveness, the ability to cope with stress, and as well as their development for cognitive skills delayed. All of this research from Brown leads us to investigate the next 5 questions. Let's talk to the researchers and see what they have found.
Our first topic will be over play and its place in the classroom. As this has been a conflict for many years, according to Dr. Peter Gray, play can be described as serious, yet not serious, trivial, yet profound, imaginative, and spontaneous, yet bound by rules and anchored in the real world. And with that, we will move into our question. Can you please explain to us how teachers incorporate play into the classroom?
After receiving an abundant amount of responses from teachers, I discovered that 8 out of 11 teachers use centers in their classroom to incorporate play, which is a phenomenal approach that any teacher can adopt into their classroom to integrate play.
Centers provide opportunities for children to learn, engage, and play, as well as support individual differences through opportunities for students to organize and manage their own learning, including the following of routine and meeting personal expectations or goals.
Teachers can set up a multitude of centers in their classrooms that incorporate play, from literacy centers to art centers to science centers and everything in between.
So, for you viewers at home, you may be wondering what kinds of play children can possibly be participating in the classroom that is educational. And the answer to that is, really any type of play can be educational. Let's go into more detail about this.
Jean Piaget, a constructivist theorist who advocates that children learn through playful experiences, separates play into 3 different types. The first type of play is sensory motor play.
So would this type of play allow a child to use their 5 senses?
Yes, children can touch, taste, smell, visualize, and hear to make sense of the world around them. As children explore the world around them, they build neural pathways in their brains that connect their prior knowledge to the new knowledge that they are observing.
Water centers would be a wonderful way of incorporating sensory motor play because children can explore the properties and uses of water as they touch, dig, scoop, and play.
The second type of play is pretend play. Pretend play involves children pretending to be somebody else, imitating actions and speech from earlier observed situations. Pretend play can be done both alone as well as with peers.
It is also important to note that children are often unable to verbally express their feelings due to their limited vocabularies and understanding of emotions, which makes pretend play a great outlet for these feelings to be expressed.
Yes, that is where we can bring in dramatic play. It allows them the opportunity to verbalize feelings that they might not be able to express in other contexts. To further on with dramatic play would be especially useful in a literacy center where students are learning to tell stories through acting or puppet shows.
Here is a clip of dramatic play.
Children develop physically, cognitively, emotionally, and socially through dramatic play.
Would y'all want a drink or anything?
Children can learn how to tie, zip, button, and buckle when they dress up for role play. Other fine motor skills are strengthened as children play doctor, run a bank, prepare meals, and write up menus. By rearranging the play area and setting the stage for their varying scenarios, children use their gross motor skills. Children are able to use their imagination and develop their creativity as they pretend to be someone else.
Who are you?
Language skills and vocabulary increase as children communicate words and phrases modeled by their classmates and adults. Problem-solving skills evolve during setup, cleanup, and even while children perform their roles' duties within the scene. An understanding of symbols occur when a child uses a block or basic prop to become something different than it actually is.
Can the baby get a seat? Here, this could be the baby seat.
Dramatic play offers a safe way to express emotions. Pretending to be an adult, such as a parent or teacher, allows the child to show anger or compassion, and can also provide a sense of autonomy, power, and control.
And pizza. Okay. You don't have to tell me.
The distinction between fantasy and reality develops while pretending.
When this you can't hold it. It's burning.
Role-taking, perspective-taking, cooperation and sharing, as well as multicultural awareness may all be experienced in the Dramatic Play Center. Children learn about others in varying situations and develop empathy and learn to see things from other points of view. Dramatic play is everywhere and can easily cross over to blocks, literacy, sand and water play, and even onto the playground. The teacher's role in encouraging dramatic play is to set the stage by carefully considering the location and space in your classroom. Furnish your home with child-sized basics like stoves, sinks, tables, chairs, doll beds, and mirrors. Child-sized furniture allows children to feel big and in control.
The last type of play is games with rules. Children follow or create rules to reach a shared objective in a game. Concepts like turn-taking are reinforced by this type of play.
At a young age, children play by their own rules. Math centers are a great example of when students can use games with rules.
Yes, math centers would be great because there are many different games kids can choose to play with that blend math skills with play so that children are learning while they are having fun at the same time.
That is a great idea, although there is one crucial thing to remember, and that is the fact that the child has to initiate and choose how the play will occur. When teachers force them to play a game or make up a skit when they are not interested, the student will not make the vital connections in their brains to connect prior knowledge with new knowledge, and they will not get anything out of the lesson. The child must be allowed to use intrinsic motivation. Therefore, whatever content the teacher may have tried to teach them through the teacher's own agenda will not make its way into a child's long-term memory without their individualism.
Let's take a look at the short video over the 3 different types of play.
Play! Why are we talking about play? Because play supports language development, communication, and social skills. Through play, we learn about eye contact, taking turns, and interacting with each other. We learn about taking another person's perspective and self-regulation skills. We develop language and vocabulary and storytelling skills. And most importantly, we experience the joy of learning. Through play, we can have fun and we can learn. The first stage of play is functional play. Functional play begins before the age of 2 in infants and young toddlers and lasts through into adulthood. Functional play is sensory motor play. This is when we see young infants and toddlers laughing and smiling and making eye contact with their caregiver. We also, through sensory motor play, are spinning and jumping and doing headstands and handstands and dance. We explore objects. We smell them and touch them and taste them. And we listen to them. The second stage of play, symbolic play, or also known as pretend play, begins at age 2 and lasts through into adulthood. The first part of symbolic play is constructional play. We take blocks and build and construct and destroy them because it's also fun. We select specific colors for a painting or drawing through constructional play. The second part of symbolic play is dramatic play, and it's mastered between the ages of 3 and 5 years old. It's pretending to be someone else, pretending to be something else. Moo! Ike, 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 ike. Ba, ba. Or someone else. Stick 'em up, buy all your money. Oh, please don't take my money. Stop right there! I'm going to give you a ticket. And we also, when we are adults, we pretend that we're not listening sometimes by putting our nose into a book. And the third stage of play is game play. And this develops at school age and beyond. Through games, we learn rules, logic, and strategy. Social skills learned in the early ages of play are required to succeed at this type of play, playing games. So we might do that through a board game, video games, or a sport. Here comes the pitch! Hello? Oh, yes, I'll be there. I'm coming.
Now that we have established solutions, what are some misconceptions?
I found through my research that many teachers don't use play in their day-to-day teaching styles. In More Play Please, written by Megan Lynch, she discusses that the reason why play is disappearing from classrooms is because some teachers find that the techniques that do involve play is viewed as a lazy way of teaching, or thinks that learning through play, such as sinners, takes too long and is a waste of time and often gets in the way of teaching and preparing the students for their future classes, even at young ages.
I also found that the teachers who disapprove of learning through play believe that this method, even in preschool, can be detrimental to development and learning because the teachers aren't preparing the students for kindergarten or grades beyond.
However, by limiting play and problem solving, it has been proven to damage the development of children, which is a common correlation found in felons. By not engaging in play, they lacked social, emotional, and cognitive development necessary in learning and becoming a functioning adult. Experiencing while playing will go beyond what can be taught in any education, therefore is a vital part of development. By not allowing students to experience play, they're limiting the amount of connections and mental representations they make in their brain, which can affect their perception.
Another misconception of play is that often teachers misconceive learning games such as Kahoot as play, which is a tool for using technology to administer quizzes, discussions, or surveys. And although this is a game and it can be fun, Kahoot is a teacher-structured activity and therefore not play, because it is not allowing the child to learn in their own individual ways or through exploration and creativity.
Exactly. Through interviews with teachers, I found that 2 out of 11 teachers misinterpreted play with study games. Even though they are fun, these activities are teacher-directed and designed and didn't have the students' immediate interest. All the students learn differently, and when it comes to learning and reviewing, a student often knows best for themselves, and a teacher can't always be in control of this. One teacher said, "I have several review games for them to play, also iPad games for fast facts for them to play to help with facts." While another one said, "Currently, play is more academic and focused around stations. We have stations depending on the topic the kids can rotate around the room and participate in. For example, with math, kids can work on addition of single digits with many different stations that might be considered play, rolling the dice and adding, boggle with numbers, adding, and iPad apps are some to name."
After in-depth research of the teacher responses along with our personal research, we are able to identify play as an essential element in the classroom because according to the Universal Design for Learning, there are 3 key areas that are required to be activated for one to learn. and those are listed in our picture here. And these 3 areas can be activated simultaneously through play, which allows for the child to develop appropriately as well as create lasting knowledge.
How to implement instruction that is learners.
The homework, the books. The day begins and ends when the bells ring. For centuries now, this has defined what all of us think about school. We have come to believe that this is the one way that students will learn. And with that belief, we have taught all of our students in pretty much the exact same way. But the world has changed, and what it means to be ready to succeed in the future has also changed. That means our model of learning must change. It's happening now, and it needs to happen even more, in more places, for all students, especially for those for whom the current system isn't working. There is strong data that shows we need to rethink learning. Like remodeling a house, we're not just adding a new coat of paint, we're updating the outdated parts and making it more modern and efficient, strengthening what works and fixing what doesn't. Gone are the days when some students can excel and others just get by. Our society needs all kids to excel at high levels, and to make this happen, we need to engage our students like never before. This is student-centered learning. It incorporates the student's skills and interests into the learning process, making the experience more personalized and involving the student in his or her own future. What makes this work? There are 4 key principles of student-centered learning. Number 1, learning is personalized. Personalized learning happens when teachers know students, have strong relationships with them, and can meet students where they are in their development. Number 2, learning is competency-based. Learning is about the information and skills a student has mastered, not just moving through a curriculum. In a competency-based system, students can proceed at their own pace in every subject, enabling teachers to respond to individual needs, interests, and challenges. Number 3, learning happens anytime, anywhere. Students will often make important discoveries about themselves and the world around them when they learn beyond the traditional school day and outside the traditional school walls. Learning doesn't start and stop when the bells ring. And number 4, the last key to student-centered learning is students take ownership. Don't make a decision about students without students. They play a direct role in their own success, actively engaging with the process to ensure the impact is lasting and meaningful. For student-centered learning to work, all 4 of these principles must work together. This is not an a la carte approach. It's reimagining education so it works for all students. The fact is, our world is changing. And with the latest in child development research, we know better than ever before how children and young adults learn. The facts are there, and they point to the need for a new system of learning designed around each student. And when the student becomes stronger and more focused, all of us will benefit from a new generation that is contributing to our communities and our world in so many ways. This is student-centered learning.
Learner-centered learning is based on the idea that the child will be allowed to learn through play in their own personal guidelines or structure with minimal interference from adults.
In a learner-centered environment, the child must have the ability to be autonomous, adaptably from both parties, and responsive interactions that correlate with the children's interests.
A good model to use when implementing learner-centered methods is Maria Montessori's model. Maria pushes that adult interaction should be to a minimum only when assistance to complete a task is needed. Exploring and learning about their environment is crucial to a child's development, which is why she believed any rewards or punishments could throw a child's spirits off.
Montessori-style learning is strongly learner-centered and is set up that way today. Teachers must lay out the tool and environment for students but step back, observe, record, and only intervene when help is needed.
How do teachers implement learner-centered learning, and how many teachers implemented learner-centered learning from your responses?
From our findings, 8 out of 11 teachers mentioned taking their students' different learning styles into consideration, or allowing the child to be in charge of their learning when developing lesson plans.
That really fits well with the definition of learner-centered learning. What happens when a classroom is not learner-centered?
When a classroom is not learner-centered and is teacher-directed, the atmosphere of the classroom tends to be more structured. This method refers to Siegfried Engelmann's theory, which discusses teaching through direct instruction, where the teacher controls every aspect of the classroom and lesson. It restricts a child to one specific way of learning, and a child will not develop the ability to be autonomous, which means they will not learn to be independent and self-directing.
Whenever teachers don't leave room for exploration and self-development, the student may get lost in the explanation or lesson.
The student may not understand the purpose behind the assignment, which will lessen a child's motivation. And when a child doesn't have self-motivation, there is a very small chance that they will actually learn.
Therefore, intrinsic motivation plays a key role in learning.
Something else I came across when researching and interviewing teachers was that teachers were not fully understanding the concepts that are required for learner-centered learning to take place. In fact, they even confused direct instruction with learner-centered learning.
1 out of 11 teachers responded to making activities learner-centered through holding academic nights to model the activities the students did in class. We tell the parents each week through our newsletters what their kids are working on, said one teacher.
Involving the families brings us to reciprocal relationships and is straying away from the concept of building a learner-centered environment. While it is important to keep the families involved and model activities, this is not what a learner-centered classroom is, because this example models teacher-directed activities, and in a learner-centered classroom, it is up to the child how to present and what to present.
Learner-centered learning must be focused on the whole child. Through educational romanticism, Stanley Hall provides great insight into how one can apply this idea. Whole child means that the teacher must focus on social psychology, psychological testing, and educational counseling. If the teacher ignores these, the child will not reach optimal learning. Readiness and maturation are key factors in the child experiencing a critical input experience. When allowing the learner-centered learning to occur, it's more likely that the child will experience a critical input experience, as it will happen more at their own will. A learner-centered approach brings to life a student's choice, engagement, and listening skills.
The child's optimal learning will require the teacher to have a great understanding of psychological stages of development, because if not, the teacher will lack the knowledge required to create an environment that in which the child can explore, examine, and develop. This may seem simple, but if the child lacks exposure to stimuli that is appropriate for their development in order to create schemas, they may not reach optimal learning.
When planning to make a learner-centered lesson, one should consider the fact that cognitive development and social-emotional factors will play a key concept in creating an appropriate plan. This is also one of the benefits of learner-centered learning, especially when considering play, as the child will have the ability to guide the learning at their actual level of development.
Hall's stages of development may play as a guide to understand where the child is developmentally, which can guide your direction for learning. According to Universal Design for Learning and Differentiated Learning, there has to be multiple means by which the child is learning the material in order for transference of knowledge to occur. In a learning center classroom, the child will have the ability to create these means through experience, developing long-term potential, and according to the new science of learning, long-term potential aids in the transfer of knowledge, thus allowing the child to truly learn.
The child's development should be assessed through play.
Assessment is the process of gathering information for a purpose, data documentation and recording, analyzing or evaluating information, and using information. There are 2 types of assessment categories that are done in the classroom.
The first type of assessment, formal assessment, is the use of standardized testing instruments based on administration guidelines such as achievement test, readiness test, developmental screening test, intelligence test, and even diagnosis test. For example, we have things like the TAKS test or the STAR test that are also formal assessments.
Formal assessment is more common in higher grades, but is being implemented as well in lower grades such as kindergarten. Teaching students through tests, worksheets, and busy work came about when school-based readiness became a part of the curriculum and a requirement to move on to the next grade, according to Lori Shepard.
Formal assessment would fit well with Engelman's direct instruction method because Engelman's method focuses more on moving the child onto the next level rather than the child's actual learning.
Does formal assessment testing have any kinds of effects on the students?
A standardized test can affect students drastically in a mental manner. The amount of sleep the child got the night before, their mood, whether or not they are good at test taking, with the time limit, and etc. can affect how well a child performs on the test. 1 out of 11 teachers discussed that they do a lot of assessments through rubrics and checklists to make sure that the students are following directions and making sure they are doing what they need to be doing. This is still a form of assessment because it does not give a student a lot of room to grow and express their creative thinking because they are still required to do exactly what the teacher wants and not necessarily how they want to do it. Students should always be able to explain themselves, their technique, and their thinking. Through testing and formal rubrics and checklists, students aren't always able to fully express themselves due to the set restrictions of the teacher.
Formal assessment is what we all grew up recognizing and kind of disliking.
The second type of assessment, informal assessment, consists of observational and work sampling techniques focusing on children's performance, process, and products within a variety of contexts. For example, watching students play with blocks.
Constructivists express that knowledge is a process rather than an accumulation of information. When teachers use a means of an informal assessment, such as observations to assess a student, they are looking at a student's learning process.
Teachers are examining where children start the year developmentally, watching the procedures children conduct to advance their development, and noting the transformations that they are seeing in their students.
Informal assessments should be highly prioritized over formal assessments, such as standardized test scores, because they look at the student's learning process rather than the end product of their knowledge. On top of that, standardized testing promotes rote memorization of facts, which has been proven that children do not retain the information they learned in order to pass the standardized test.
One beneficial system that teachers can implement into their classroom as an alternative to standardized testing is to document a student's learning process through the use of a portfolio assessment.
Portfolio assessments provide an ongoing, authentic representation of children's learning over time. The key to portfolio assessments is to document what children are thinking and doing in multiple ways on a continuous basis. Collecting and displaying evidence can be in the form of photographs, video, or audio recordings, performances, constructions, multimedia bulletin boards, drawings, and other visual arts, or writing.
These concrete expressions of understanding can be shared, discussed, sequenced, and compared until their value is clear. Then, teachers will have the insights they need to shape each learning environment in optimal ways for their students, and children will be able to see changes in their learning, share their work, and develop a sense of ownership within the learning process. In my teacher responses, I found that 9 out of 11 of the teachers observe their students in some sort of way to assess student growth.
Standard assessment is when the adult has a goal in mind. The child must act independently without any teacher or peer help on the given assessment, and the adult finds out basic skills from the given child. Whereas play-based assessment is when you find out the goals through learner-centered activities. Adults must interact, but only to help with the children's independent achievement. Adults involved in play-based assessment discover potential skills for the given child, according to ECHE County Council.
The NAEYC and the National Association of Early Childhood Specialists and state departments of education have been studying and notifying educators of the damage testing children can be because it is developmentally inappropriate.
The recommendation is that children ages 3 through 8 should be assessed on what can benefit them, or nothing should be collected from the assessment. Children shouldn't be held back because of assessments, kicked out of programs, or be assigned to a different group than their fellow peers because of failed tests.
Assessing should be done to plan instruction and how to properly communicate with the parents. It should also be designed to find students with special needs and to evaluate any current programs.
Assessing when children are playing is when teachers interact with children using certain materials in a play area to find information on the child's specific developmental level. They find ways on how to teach the child with significant learning and by assessing children. Teachers serve as the mediator, which is a good support system to make sure the child is learning and developing appropriately.
Within informal assessment, the teacher has the opportunity to create true, meaningful experiences and environments which allows the child to show their true development of knowledge through a multisensory approach. This is not the same case with formal assessment because more often than not, the child cannot incorporate a multisensory approach due to the structure of the assessment, which is significant in learning and recall. According to New Science of Learning, learning and recall are made significantly easier when you use a multisensory approach, which makes it easier for the child to demonstrate their knowledge. Thus, in turn, will allow for the teacher to create environments that are developmentally appropriate for the child's true knowledge level.
How teachers can create a caring community. A caring community is created through various concepts such as social relationships, safe environments, and trusting relationships. All of these concepts must correlate in order to form a successful caring community.
Caring School Community provides one of the most authentic ways to really build a school-wide community. It focuses not just on what's happening in a classroom, but takes into account the relationships that are also so important. Cross-age relationships, how we involve parents, how we work as a whole school-wide community, even how teachers interact with each other. All of that is addressed intentionally in Caring School Community.
Qualities a teacher can use for a caring community include flexibility, adaptability, experiential and inquiry-based learning environment, paying attention to children's needs or concerns, being mindful of the children's interests, needs, and abilities, and being able to create and maintain positive reciprocal relationships, set positive examples of peer interaction and kindness, periodically reviewing and assess the physical classroom environment, also taking into consideration culture, ethnicity, and socioeconomic diversity in the classroom.
All right, before we start our class meeting, I want you to remember our class meeting rules. Remember that one person talks at a time. Make sure you look at the person talking. You're doing it right now. And when mentioning problems, say people instead of using names. We've been working all year on building a safe community.
When teachers were asked how they could create a caring community of learners, only 1 out of 11 of the teachers stressed the essential component of having the classroom that looks inviting to the children the second that they walk in. The physical appearance of the classroom environment is very important. This is often overlooked. According to the research article, Helping Children Play and Learn Together by Michaeline Ostrowski, teachers need to pay special attention to the classroom environment and how it can impact social and emotional development. Use strategies to promote engagement and reduce misconduct within the classroom environment. A well-planned and well-stocked learning center makes it more likely that the children will be happily engaged in their learning activities with one another because they will feel that they have everything that they need to succeed. Consideration to a child's personal experiences is needed in a caring community of learners, so there should always be a space for a child in case he needs some alone time. Sometimes kids need time to themselves, and it is okay if a student needs to use this space quite often because we want to promote that caring and safe space.
5 out of 11 teachers agree that children's social emotional state should be taken care of through having student-to-teacher and student-to-student talks through morning talk time, where, for example, the teacher would ask about a student's weekend or how they are feeling about particular subjects. Another form of talk time could happen through peer interaction and having children work together within the classroom to encourage good interpersonal relationships. According to an article titled Helping Children Play and Learn Together, the NAEYC component of creating a caring community includes students having social relationships. Social relationships will help the students develop socially and cognitively. Social relationships give students the opportunity to establish and recognize trust. When a child gains trust, they will feel more comfortable in their environment, and their emotional well-being will allow them to gain better learning opportunities.
And 6 out of 11 teachers agree that setting class expectations that include mutual respect attributes are also important for creating a caring community of learners. Teachers should have a clear set of expectations and be consistent, structure an environment in which there is enough support to coordinate behavior. We can do this by observing the children and anticipating problems ahead of time. Allowing children to create classroom rules helps build a caring community of learners because it gives them a sense of empowerment, ownership, and community engagement that increases student motivation. Children will feel safer in an environment when they help establish the rules, and feeling safe is important because they will not learn if they do not feel safe. 3 out of 11 teachers responded that they also contribute towards creating a caring community of learners by modeling expectations. Their responses were similar to this great example. One of the teachers stated, "I reflect what I expect from my students through how I interact with other teachers and professionals. I want a caring community and classroom, and I model that daily in my relationships with my colleagues." Children tend to be egocentric or immature of thinking, almost selfish, innocently. So one should think of this when creating a caring community, as the young children are in this state of thinking and require adult modeling or imitation and interactions in order to grasp boundaries and social norms.
In an article written by Carrie Ferrer, Ellen Skinner, and Jennifer Pitzer, the three discuss that recognizing the signs that a teacher is not having a caring community can benefit the teacher. They should not use this to harm the students, but to benefit the classroom as a whole. Chances are, the teacher isn't the only one unengaged and uninterested. By realizing tardiness, rude behaviors, and being unresponsive, for example, can help the teacher turn around the class.
With the lack of building a caring community, an authoritarian style of teaching is evolved, which often run by a teacher who struggles with making a student feel comfortable in a classroom feeling welcoming. The classroom often revolves around the teacher and their expectations, as well as the academic standards. This type of teacher can often develop a sense of mistrust and behavioral issues due to this.
Also, students can tell when a teacher doesn't like them with their tone of voice or certain comments towards the student. By making the students feel out of place or bossed around, it can deny the validity of student experiences. Therefore, it is crucial for teachers to set aside their emotions towards the class, student, or whatever is happening in their personal lives to have a good attitude and portray a caring personality. In order for a teacher to regain control in a classroom, many develop a reward or reinforcement system.
Skinner proposed reinforcement is anything that follows behavior and causes such behavior to be repeated or stopped. 7 out of 11 teachers who were interviewed claimed that they use some form of reward for the student for good behavior or for participating in class. From compliments and high fives to charts and clips to move closer to a prize.
Punishment and rewards that behaviorists utilize in their classrooms might work for that moment, but the use of them fails to teach the child the appropriate skills needed to learn, change, and grow for the long term.
Punishment and rewards will not teach a child to do something that is not in their zone of proximal development.
Extrinsic rewards, punishment, depriving students of participation in any form of abuse within a child's environment has a negative impact on their neutral development, thus increasing the likelihood of behavioral issues and damaging reciprocal relationships.
Caring communities are essential and have such a significance because of the fact that children that are in kindergarten through 3rd grade still have a very egocentric way of thinking. Egocentrism will be shown less as the child grows and develops, as adults and others will help set boundaries that will allow for the child to take other factors into consideration. These necessary experiences are created through a caring community.
Tell me what you see when you look at that from where you're sitting. What are some of the things that you see?
And a cat.
A cat.
And a tree and a bone.
Okay, now we're going to do the same thing. Can you tell me what you see when you look at it from that stool?
An owl.
An owl?
And him.
What is that?
A goat.
A goat?
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else you see?
Yeah, right there.
Right there, what is that?
A tree.
A tree.
And that's another little tree.
Another little tree?
Yeah, right.
Okay. And can you tell me what I see when I look at this from where I'm sitting right here?
An owl.
Okay.
And a goat.
Mm-hmm.
And a little tree. And that. And that.
How to build reciprocal relationships between parent-teacher, teacher-student, and student-student. Reciprocal relationships are adult positive relationships developed when adults listen and communicate effectively with children or with other adults.
Good teachers do not have to be parents, but parents and teachers do have a lot in common, and I think sometimes teachers and parents forget that we want the same things for our kids.
Open house that year. She only had us for 15 minutes. You all know open house is not very long. And what she did, she organized the presentation in a way that she really explored her teaching philosophy with us. She talked about the strategies that she used and why she was using them. She also talked about the expectations, and then she even gave us some little bits of advice about how to reinforce what was going to be happening in the first grade so that we could take it home and also reinforce so that our child would do better in the classroom that school year. But that year, we were going through a lot with testing in Chicago public schools, and she had an honest conversation with us about what those tests were going to tell us about our student and what they weren't. And then she was also honest about how she needed help because all of these new tests were really taking away from the time in the classroom where she should be teaching. And she asked if we could be parent volunteers. And it was that honest conversation that she was having with us that made me really think about what was happening in Chicago public schools from a different perspective. And from there, a lot of us in that classroom were able to be advocates around what was going on in testing that school year. So those are just two personal examples about how teachers were able to reach out to me, this busy mother, and be able to connect with me about my child's learning. So this is what it looks like. It looks like respect. It looks like meeting parents where they're at. It looks like not stigmatizing parents. So I talked about the texting and the phone calls after school and during school, but a lot of teachers have been using newsletters so that when the parent does have some downtime, they can go through the newsletter and see what's going on in the classroom and talk to their child about what's going on. I usually get the gossip first about who likes who and stuff like that, but those deeper conversations about what the child is learning. Because I want to leave you all with this, because I don't want to talk too much. But teachers' working conditions are students' learning conditions. And once you're able to translate what you need to do that school year in those terms, you'll get parents to be able to not just change that classroom, but also can change the system.
Maintained between teachers and parents so that there is a positive learning environment and agreement with what is going on in the curriculum. Student behavior oftentimes improves when there is a parent-teacher trust and communication. The student will see the involvement of their parent with their teacher, and they will take this example of a trusting relationship and feel that sense of trust and respect towards their teacher too. Parent involvement with the teacher is important to a child's development. Studies have shown that it helps with personality development. The lack of parental involvement has been proven to possibly lead to behavioral issues, academic difficulty, unemployment, anxiety, depression, and many more complications that can also affect the student in the long run. Modern-day technology has made communication with parents easier to manage since we can keep in touch via email, text message, and many other options. From our teacher responses, we noted that only 2 out of 11 teachers mentioned making sure to keep in touch with and maintain reciprocal relationships with parents, and both of those teachers described their means of communication as involving technology as key facilitators.
Student-teacher relationships have changed a lot since we were in school, from what we once believed to just have student expectations and instructional interactions and discipline in the classroom.
It is evident from our teacher responses that student-to-teacher and teacher-to-student relationships are an imperative tool to becoming an educator, as 9 out of 11 of the teachers stress the importance of building trusting communication with their students. The 9 of 11 teachers also state that they make sure to make students feel cared for and loved by ensuring through conversation and posing questions that they are doing well emotionally. Making our students feel safe and cared for allows the child to become autonomous while forming trusting relationships. It is essential that an educator understands the importance of these interactions, as they will affect the child's emotional and social development, which correlates with cognitive growth. Thus, in order to create optimal learning, one must address social and emotional development as well. There is more of an emphasis on building reciprocal relationships now than there ever has been before. I noticed in my research, in order to initiate these relationships, teachers must actively listen develop trusting relationships with the student by having mutual respect, and embrace diversity, which factors in biological aspects such as age, sex, ethnicity, temperament, development history, and experience. Peer-to-peer relationships can demonstrate qualities of reciprocal relationships through being respectful, embracing diversity, and working collaboratively, all with the teacher serving as a moderator. Shockingly, only 3 out of 11 teachers even mention the importance of allowing time for or encouraging peer-to-peer interaction. Peer-to-peer relationships are extremely important. Relationships in the classroom have an impact on student achievement because the brain does not automatically or perceptually separate cognition from emotions. Kids learn from each other. And this should be taken into consideration when forming reciprocal relationships because the children will mimic behaviors, therefore, we should implement positive behaviors.
From our teacher interview data, we have seen that 9 out of 11 teachers understand and push reciprocal relationships. We have noticed that just student-teacher relationships is not always enough for a student to develop appropriately. These parent-teacher and peer-peer relationships greatly affect the experience of school for the student.
All of these relationships greatly impact the student's learning, as well as achievement, pleasure, and retention. Students will feel better, more motivated, and happier with themselves when they are in a reciprocal relationship. Not only do these things affect the student, but it also affects the teacher's sense of well-being, efficiency, happiness at work, and how much they actually get back from their own lessons.
By using methods such as group learning, project approach, and student-led learning, it increases curiosity in the classroom, allowing creativity and having cognitive challenges. Also, by the students being more engaged, it also increases the motivation and engagement of the teacher, creating a mutually satisfying relationship.
Reciprocal relationships are significant to students' development and learning because through these student-teacher relationships, parent-teacher, and peer-peer relationships, students are gaining a sense of extrinsic motivation for their studies through the people around them. By increasing the engagement of their students, the students are also creating more neurological connections in their brain to retain the information better. It has been proven that the long-term effects of having a good relationship with students can provide success such as graduating high school and college entry.
Mental health research reflects the importance of physical exercise, the value of dramatic play as a therapeutic tool, and the need for healthy, play-based social relationships at early ages as effective means of reducing the incidence of anxiety, depression, and behavioral problems for young children.
Why is play important? Well, begin to think of life without it. No humor, no innovation, diminished creativity, depression, physical inactivity, and then think about life with it. Humor, optimism, physical activity, deep engagement, and it is the key to unlocking one's own innate personal talents. It is also the key to really looking within oneself for what is it that really motivates me, what makes me a self, what gives me a sense of purpose, what gives me a sense of future. And without play, we don't really have that deep engagement in life and our own future and our own authentic self.
Maybe if Nicholas Cruz had all the opportunities to play like a child needs, the shooting may not have happened, since play is needed for healthy social relationships. This is all we have for you today, and thank you for watching.